Good morning. Thanksgiving is coming. I love Thanksgiving, not just because it's deer season. I like the holiday. There's not a whole lot of commercialism about it. They make it a little bit commercial, but it's about a time of family. Even around hunting, you have family, friends, get togethers. I enjoy the atmosphere of home and family. We never did the big Thanksgiving dinner with children, grandparents, reunions, all that. The dinners with 60 million calories. From the time I was probably 16 until now I'm 62, I probably haven't had more than 3 or 4 Thanksgiving dinners on Thanksgiving because I was always hunting. But that's what made me happy. But I never forgot to be thankful because I was usually hunting with friends or family. And thankful is something that we are to be always. It's something that we're also not just to be, but we're to teach. We're to teach our children to say thanks and be thankful. We're trying to teach Liam, a 1-year-old, to say thank you when we give him something. But see, we're born expecting everything. Because when you're a baby, you get everything you need and want handed to you. You cry, you get a bottle. You cry, they lift you up. They hold you. You cry, they change your diaper. We are conditioned to just cry to get what we want. And then when you get to be 1 and 2 years old and you're trying to teach them to say thank you and to share, and you can't have everything you want, it's a hard job. And sometimes it's even hard to do it to adults. You know, Thanksgiving is a time of humility, a time of gratitude to God where we count our blessings. Whether you're in the woods, whether you're with family, whether you're preparing a big dinner, we are to be thankful. But thanks is more than a word, it's an attitude of the heart. But we've used the word thanks until we have changed sort of the meaning. It doesn't have the same meaning. We do that with a lot of words: love, hate, thanks. We can use the word thanks and not mean it. You ever have a telemarketer call you? Thanks, but no thanks. We didn't mean thanks. No way, shape, or form. We weren't really feeling gratitude. The point is that you can use the term thanks and not mean it. I've done it. We were going to take a couple deer on permits when I was in Hampshire County. And my friend, he shot his and dropped it, and mine was there. And I shot. And when I shot, the deer just looked and took off running up over the ridge. Wasn't hurt a bit. And I was angry because I missed. And I was also angry because I missed right in front of my friend who didn't miss. My friend looked over at me and said, "I think you missed." I knew that. I looked at him, I said, "Thanks," but I didn't mean it. Not a bit. Do we ever do that when we talk to God? Do we ever say thanks, but we really don't mean it in our heart? Unbelievers use the term. Even people that are atheists use the term, thank God. But they don't mean it. They use it as an epithet of relief instead of gratitude. I want to read a scripture today about 2 men who prayed. Let's see. It's out of Luke chapter 18, verses 9 to 14. Also he spoke this parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and despised others. 2 men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself: God, I thank you that I am not like other men, extortionists, unjust, adulterers, or even as this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give tithes of all that I possess. And the tax collector, standing afar off, would not so much as raise his eyes to heaven, but beat his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. And Jesus said, I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who exalts himself will be abased, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. Jesus was a master storyteller, and he knew his audience, and he loved a surprise ending. Look at the similarities. Both of them were men. Both came to pray. Both came to the temple. Both came to the same God, and both spoke of the condition that they were in. The Pharisee in 11 and 12 says, I thank you that I am not like other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even as this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give tithes of all that I possess. He stood. He never kneeled. I think he stood so he could be seen praying, a Pharisee praying to God, even though he was arrogant and really didn't need God's help in what he said. He stood to be seen. I think if it would have helped his stature, he would have kneeled to have people see how pious he was, or pious. Position doesn't always mean something. You can be on your knees and still not be thankful. He probably was wearing the finest of religious robes because the Pharisees had money. His prayer, God, I thank you, started out okay. And if he stopped there, he would have been on the right track. But his prayer was to himself, with himself. I am not like other men. I am something. I'm not a sinner like this other guy. I'm not like this man in particular. Tax collector was rated as one of the worst sinners of the times. Do we ever do that? I'm not like them. Thank God I've never done that. I've never done drugs. I've never done that. I'm not like that person. We love to be and give good, bad examples. I'm not like so-and-so. Yeah, he comes to church and acts like he's a Christian, but he's only here half the time. And then he goes out on Saturday night. Thank God I'm not like that. You ever heard somebody say that? The Pharisee said, I, 5 times. That was a prayer to himself about himself. He started out by thanking God, but then he went to about what a great person he was. He didn't even qualify it by saying, but for the grace of God, there go I. Have we ever done that? Have we ever been the Pharisee? Have we ever thanked God that I'm not like that? Have we ever thanked God that I've never stooped that low? And then look at the tax collector. He was too was standing, but it was afar off. He was like afraid to come to the temple because he was such a sinner. He brings up the minds of some of the other parables Jesus has told. The prodigal son in a far-off country. Peter followed him from afar. The lepers in Luke 17 stood afar off. He would not so much as raise his eyes to heavens. He was humble, contrite. Jesus painted a picture. He painted a picture of the Pharisees that were arrogant and thought that they were better than everybody else, especially thought they were so much better than a tax collector. And he showed how the prayer of the Pharisees against the prayer of the humble tax collector who knew he was a sinner differed. The tax collector beat his breast. Why? Because he knew the problem was in his heart. Do you ever do something dumb and say, smack yourself in the head like that? Because we know we've messed up in the head. We've made a mistake. I've done that and go, oh, how could I do that? And he was saying that to his heart. The tax collector knew his problem wasn't his social standing, his intellectual shortcomings, financial issues. He beat his breast because he knew the issue was one of the heart. An ungrateful heart. Hardened, cold, unyielding, prideful, and sinful. And he asked God for help. He doesn't come in declaring his positive side, saying, God, I'm all this, so you got to forgive me. Thanking God for how good he is. No, he came in beating his chest, telling God how terrible he was. Standing afar off, even afraid to raise his eyes to Christ, to God. He confessed. But the Pharisee didn't have it in him. He wasn't repentant. He didn't say he was a sinner. He didn't even say, I will do better. And Jesus said, I tell you. Jesus could have embarrassed the whole crowd and could have said, this man is exactly like all of you. But he didn't do that. He used a parable to tell them the story that they would understand. He didn't want to embarrass them. The Pharisee may have compared himself and found himself doing well. But that's the only opinion that he had. He didn't have God's opinion. You know, it's like the WVU games. You know, we're on Facebook while we're watching the game. We get a bad call, which it happens every game. We don't get any respect, right? Millions of people, well, I don't know how many, if there's millions watch the WVU game, but I know hundreds of thousands. And you get on Facebook and everybody's saying, we were robbed. That was a bad call. The refs missed that one. Doesn't matter how many thousands of us saw that was a bad call. The ref made the call and it stands. Doesn't matter what we think about how good we are, like the Pharisee. Doesn't matter. We can say, I'm good, I'm not like that. But the opinion of Christ is the one that matters because he makes the call and he knows our heart. Are we thankful? Or are we arrogant like the Pharisee? Jesus said this man went to his house justified. Not the one who came thanking God, not the Pharisee who came to put on a show, but the one coming humbly asking for mercy. And Jesus knew his audience. That's why I said he was a master storyteller for the parables he told. Now, if we told that story today and we used the word, the people say evangelist Billy Graham and Osama bin Laden came to pray, you'd be shocked if I told you that bin Laden was the one that left justified in his prayer and not Billy Graham. In a similar sense, that was sort of like what he was saying, because the Pharisees were well known. They were the religious leaders. They were rich. People looked up to them. So when they found out, Jesus said, your cohort wasn't justified, but the tax collector who you look down on, the sinner, is. Because all the Pharisees looked down on tax collectors and sinners and thought they were better than others. And Jesus said, for everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. True thanksgiving is birthed in humility. Are we grateful for what God gives us? Are we grateful for the blessings that God gives us, for the things we have? It's been a rough day or so. I've had Dad in the hospital and 2 ERs and a doctor's office and haven't had any sleep. But, I'm very thankful that God is good, that God got us through it, that we had good medical care, and that Dad is home and doing well now. Even in the midst of the problems and the pressures we have in the world, we can be thankful. Thankful for that God is there. This Thanksgiving, let us be thankful. Sometimes we think, well, I'm doing pretty good. I'm better than the rest of my family. I'm doing better than so-and-so down the street. I'm doing better than so-and-so at church who doesn't come half the time. But they are not to be our example. Our example lies in the Bible in Jesus Christ. We are to try to be Christ-like. No, we're not going to make it. We're never going to be that good. But we're going to try, because that's what Jesus asked, to live the best we can and to teach our kids and those around us to be thankful, to be really thankful for what we get. I remember years ago, I'm very grateful when I hunt. I'm very grateful when I take a deer. I love to hunt, and I love deer jerky. Most of us around here hunt. I remember years ago when I was hunting that rig, and everybody wants to kill a big buck. And I saw a nice buck coming off the ridge, was trailing a doe, and I shot it. And I saw a main beam that had 3 points. And at that time, I was a lot younger, and I hadn't killed too many big deer. And when that thing dropped, I could see that main beam sticking up with the 3 points. I thought, I got my 8.0. It's nice. And I was grateful because it was the first morning of buck season. I had a deer down, which didn't happen a lot when you hunted in a place where there wasn't a lot of deer. And I remember walking over to that deer with joy. And I pulled that head out because it fell in the leaves. And when I did, I found out instead of an 8-point, what I had was actually a 4-point. The main beam had 3 points, and the other one was just a big spike. Wasn't any points on it whatsoever. And my joy turned to disgust. And I remember going, oh, how God, that's ridiculous. And I was angry, where minutes before, I was thanking God for letting me harvest a deer to help feed my family. We can go from joy to disgust in a heartbeat. But we're not to do that. We're to be grateful for what God has given us. Luke 10:20 says, do not rejoice in it that the spirits are subject to you, but rather rejoice because your names are written in heaven. So as we go up in the next week or two leading to Thanksgiving, I want you to think, what are you thankful for? Everything you have? Everything you are? How about everything you're not? Do we ever say, I'm not like so and so? And the problem is, God's never asked us to be like others. He asks us to be like Him. So as we go up to Thanksgiving, I want you to think about being thankful for all we have. And look for reasons to be thankful because God gives them to us every day. And I got one question I want to leave you with. The Pharisee came to God out of duty, because that's what Pharisees did. They went and they prayed so they could be seen, and they prayed standing up and loudly so people could hear them. The Pharisee came out of duty. The tax collector came out of necessity because he was a sinner in need of God's grace. Why do you come? Why do you come?